Billionaire wealth has soared to record levels during the COVID-19 pandemic, with the pharmaceutical, energy and tech sectors cashing in over the last 2 years. That's according to the British charity Oxfam. To coincide with the World Economic Forum in Davos, it's released a report highlighting the growing disparities between rich and poor. Now, billionaires have seen their fortunes increase as much in 24 months as they have done in the last 23 years. Tech, energy and the energy sector billionaires, they've seen their fortunes increase by $1 billion every 2 days. I mean, this as prices for food and energy hit their highest levels in decades. Well, Gabriella Bruscia is Executive Director of Oxfam International, and she joins us now from Davos. Thanks ever so much for coming on the programme. So it sounds like that the last couple of years have been bonanza time for billionaires, but the cost of living crisis is biting around the world, pushing millions into extreme poverty.
Yes, and yes, as you said, there has been an extreme rise in billionaire wealth, and the rise in the last 24 months is equivalent to a rise in 20 years, not the last 20 years, but 20 years previously. So this, of course, at the same time has happened when so many people, we're expecting, unfortunately, 263 million people sliding into extreme poverty in 2022 because of all these crises, the COVID-19 effects, the conflict, and now inflation.
So wages aren't keeping up with food inflation or with business profits. I mean, where would you say that the poverty and wealth inequality is most striking? Which places in the world?
So Latin America has been traditionally the most unequal continent, but what we have seen during the last 2 years with the pandemic is that inequality has grown probably in every country in the world, and that's the prediction of many economists. It may have been delayed by some of the measures that were taken during the pandemic in some countries, which were short-term measures, but unfortunately the long-term effect of the pandemic is affecting large numbers of people. Women have been particularly affected because women were more represented in sectors that were hard hit, like hospitality. So that will have also long-term effects. And then inequality between countries has grown for the first time in a very long time, and that had a lot to do with vaccine access during the first part of the pandemic. Still, many countries in Africa are around 15% vaccinated, so a long way off having the rates that the majority of the world has.
So how to push those poverty numbers well back in the other direction? Is it taxing the rich to help the poorest? Is that what Oxfam's advocating?
So what we're advocating is that we actually need resources to address the multiple crises that we have in the world at the moment. We have a terrible hunger crisis. 193 million people across the world are in hunger conditions. I was in Somalia 6 weeks ago, where there's severe hunger conditions. The number of people in that situation has doubled since last year. It's the worst drought in over 40 years. The UN has said we need $6 billion to respond to that situation. However, it's only funded by 10%. So we know from 10 years ago, unfortunately, there was a large amount of people, over 260,000, who died from famine in the Horn of Africa. It was prevented in 2017 through investing in time, and we've learned a lot about how that can be done. But without the money at the moment, unfortunately, the worst consequences can materialize. So what we're saying is we really need to raise resources. And one area that we haven't tapped is wealth taxation. Wealth taxation accounts for only 4% of total taxation globally. So there is an opportunity there. And given the accumulation of wealth, small amounts like 2 to 5% wealth taxation, which some countries already have, can raise the resources that are needed for these very extreme situations that people are facing now.
So wealth tax, that's your primary recommendation. What other recommendations do you have for businesses and for governments to really try and reverse this trend?
So yes, so wealth taxation would be something that governments introduce, and it can also be a temporary measure. So Argentina introduced a solidarity tax to raise enough funds to respond to the COVID pandemic in Argentina, so that they could really prevent more suffering for the most vulnerable. So that's something that we also believe some countries can do. And then there's a possibility of taking windfall taxes from some of those sectors that have most benefited in the last 2 years, and their energy and food companies are some of the examples.
Gabriela Boucher, Executive Director at Oxfam International. Thank you.